Imagine walking into class expecting another dull lecture on alien combat tactics, only to find out the day's lesson is how to disable a human. The alien instructor, towering and smug, singles out the lone human cadet as a live demonstration subject. The class leans in, ready to see weakness exposed. But what happens next isn't humiliation. It's revelation. In a blur of movement, the fragile human shatters not just the lesson plan but the instructor's very arm. Suddenly, every assumption in the room collapses. If you love stories where humanity proves it's more than just flesh and bone, where grit, technique, and spirit outshine brute strength, stick around. We've got one of the best HFY tales lined up for you. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more human-first sci-fi, and share this story with a friend who loves a good underdog victory. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this one unfolds. The Galactic Military Academy woke slowly each morning, its vast corridors echoing with the shuffle of cadets from every corner of known space. But in one dimly lit junction, far from the bustle, 3 instructors sat huddled in a tight triangle of chairs. They weren't planning today's lesson. They were plotting revenge. Revenge against a human. His name was Lincoln, an Earthborn cadet, freshly arrived, unremarkable at first glance. Average height, average build, plain brown eyes that looked more like they belonged to a tired clerk than a soldier in training. And yet to these 3 retired veterans, he represented something larger, a chance to pay back humanity itself. Lincoln, hissed Zor, a reptilian instructor with pink scales that had earned him ridicule in his youth. His forked tongue flicked with agitation. The boy thinks he's special because he's from Earth. They all do. Beside him, Brizzix leaned forward. Nearly 7 feet tall, his violet skin glistened faintly in the low light, and his infamous third eye blinked with slow calculation. Special? They've been fast-tracked for decades, treated like the galaxy's future. And what are we? Forgotten. Left to teach basic drills. If the cadets worship humans so much, then today we'll show them how fragile they truly are. The third instructor, Quarry, shifted in his creaking chair. Towering 10 feet, his bulk made the chair look like it had been stolen from a child's classroom. He gave a low, thunderous laugh. So what's the plan? You want to humiliate him? Brizzix's thin lips curled. Exactly. A lesson. Today my class will cover how to disable a human. And Lincoln will be my assistant. The other 2 shared looks that blended cruelty with anticipation. They knew what that meant. Not an assistant, a target. When the students filed into Brizzix's classroom later that morning, they were greeted by an unusual sight. 2 extra instructors seated conspicuously at the back. Zor with his restless tail, Quarry filling a chair that groaned in protest. Their presence was intentional, meant to add pressure to make the human squirm. Brizzix stood tall at the front, arms folded behind his back. Good morning, cadets, he began smoothly. Today's topic will be slightly different. Instead of Zerjian grappling techniques, we'll examine a subject far more relevant, one you may face in battle sooner than you expect. He paused, savoring the suspense. Today's lesson is how to disable a human. The classroom buzzed instantly. Dozens of species reacted at once, a chorus of questions, hisses, chirps, and growls. A liquid-bodied student nearly lost cohesion in surprise. The 12-member Quanir collective murmured in overlapping voices. Some cadets even looked unsettled. This wasn't standard curriculum, and they knew it. And yet, Brizzix smiled. His third eye fixed on the one face that hadn't moved. Lincoln. The human sat quietly, stylus poised above his datapad, as though he were about to take notes on his own vulnerabilities. No smirk, no flinch, no flash of pride or fear, just calm. Brizzix decided to push harder. Cadet Lincoln, he said loudly, making sure every ear tuned in. Since you are our sole representative of humanity, do you object to your species being the subject of today's demonstration? Every head turned. Lincoln tilted his head slightly like he was weighing the words. Then he gave the faintest smile. Unusual, sir, but I don't mind. If anything, it's flattering. A whole class dedicated to fighting humans? That says a lot about how important we've become. The room stirred again, whispers crackling like static. Flattering? Had he just turned an insult into a compliment? Brizzix felt a spike of irritation burn beneath his skin. It was exactly the kind of infuriating confidence humans were known for. "Well then," Brizzix said silkily, "since you're so willing, you'll serve as our live demonstration. Join me up front." A ripple of unease moved through the cadets. Live combat demonstrations were usually reserved for training drones or experienced volunteers, not first years. Not like this. One student, a reptilian with orange scales, actually started to stand, likely intending to fetch an administrator. But Quarry shifted in his chair, muscles rolling like tectonic plates, and the student froze. Lincoln rose slowly. No swagger, no bravado. Just steady steps forward until he stood on the raised platform opposite Brizzix. He clasped his hands loosely at his sides, relaxed, but balanced. Brizzix circled him, voice projecting to the room. "Observe closely, cadets. Humans, despite their growing reputation, are vulnerable creatures. Their joints have limited range. Their bones, while denser than some, can be manipulated. Their muscles are average. Their endurance means nothing if you know where to strike." He lunged, seizing Lincoln's wrist and elbow in a textbook arm lock. "Notice the grip," Brizzix instructed, twisting the limb. "Apply linear force here and the elbow joint." But the joint didn't give. Instead, Lincoln shifted with the movement, body rotating just enough to redirect the force. It was subtle, smooth, like water slipping around a rock. Brizzix frowned and bore down harder, his alien strength flexing through corded arms. This time Lincoln winced, but his voice stayed calm. "Linear force on a rotating joint. That's a common mistake." Brizzix barely registered the words before he saw it, that flicker in the human's eyes. Not defiance, not fear. A decision. And then, everything changed.
Lincoln moved. Not with brute force, not with some wild burst of panic, but with precision. His legs scissored in a fluid sweep Brizzix had never seen before, tangling the alien's balance. In an instant, the towering instructor found himself off his feet, dragged into a position no combat manual had ever prepared him for. The class gasped. Quarry leaned forward. Exer's tongue froze, mid-flick. Brizzix landed hard, but before he could react, Linton was already there, wrapping his legs around the alien's torso, controlling his arm with mechanical efficiency. It was a hold Brizzix couldn't even name, one that felt both suffocating and inescapable. "This is called an armbar," Lincoln said, his voice maddeningly calm, as though he were giving a lecture rather than fighting for dominance. "It's a human technique. It's from a martial art called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We don't rely on strength. We use leverage. The elbow becomes the fulcrum, the arm, the lever." Brizzix gritted his teeth and tried to wrench free, but every movement only tightened the lock. He attempted to roll his massive frame. Lincoln shifted with him. He tried to use his other arm, but the angle denied him any power. His pride screamed louder than his body. He would not yield to a human cadet. "Sir," Lincoln warned softly, tightening his grip. "If you don't tap out, it will break." Brizzix roared and yanked one final time. The sound was sickening. Crack! The classroom froze. The noise seemed to echo against the walls, bouncing from ear to ear, impossible to mistake. A dozen cadets went pale. One let out a choked gasp. The Quanier collective flinched in perfect unison. Brizzix howled, clutching his useless arm. The once commanding instructor now knelt in the dirt of his own platform, purple skin ashen, third eye blinking in pain and humiliation. His limb dangled at an unnatural angle, broken clean. Lincoln released him instantly, rolling away and rising to his feet. He didn't gloat, he didn't grin. His face held only regret. "I warned you," he said quietly. "In jiu-jitsu, if someone refuses to tap, the joint gives. Please go to medical." That's a clean break, but it can be treated. The class remained silent, the weight of what had just happened hanging thick in the air. Even Quarry and Exer, who had been so eager to watch a humiliation, now looked carved from stone horror, replacing smugness. Brizik struggled to his feet, rage boiling through pain. "Class dismissed," he snarled, his voice trembling. The cadets needed no second order. They filed out in a hurry, whispers already spreading like wildfire. By the next meal, every corner of the academy would know. The lesson on how to disable a human, had ended with a shattered armed alien's arm. Lincoln lingered at the doorway. For a moment, he looked back at the instructor. Not pity, not triumph, something quieter, understanding. "For what it's worth, sir, your technique was solid. Against most humans, it would have worked." He paused, then added softly, "But Earth has a saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Or in this case, until they face someone who actually knows how to fight." And with that, he walked out, leaving Brizik standing in his own broken pride, his third eye unfocused and his carefully planned trap lying in ruins. The trap had been meant to teach the cadets that humans were fragile. Instead, the only lesson learned was this: underestimate a human and you may not walk away whole. And that was just the first chapter of Lincoln's story. What began as a cruel setup turned into a turning point, not just for the cadets who witnessed it, but for the very instructors who thought they could rewrite history. Humanity, once mocked as fragile, had proven something far more dangerous: adaptability, leverage, and the will to fight smart, not just hard. So what happens when the Academy, the galaxy, and those bitter instructors realize the truth? That this human wasn't just another cadet, but something much more? Stick around for Chapter 2. And if you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good HFY tale. Trust me, things are only getting started.